Hey, Monsters and Mixers listeners. Are you ready to start your own podcast but don't know how? I have the perfect solution for you. Anchor. Anchor is free and easy. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Then, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast right from the beginning with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to Monsters and Mixers, the spine-chilling podcast guaranteed to quench your thirst for all things spooky and one thing drinky. Can't get enough of paranormal or true crime stories? Then this is the place for you. We are your hosts, Amy and Emma, and each episode will feature a new story and a new cocktail recipe to help calm your nerves while you listen. So grab your ingredients, pull the covers up tight, and prepare to be terrified by tales of the darkness among us.
Welcome back. This is Spritzer Part 3 of 3. If you haven't listened to the first two stories about our haunted house, you should probably go back and do that real quick before listening to this one.
For sure. We would hate for you to miss out on the rest of the story before we tell the super scary conclusion today. I'm actually kind of nervous to talk about the stuff today because it was so terrifying when it happened.
Yeah, I might cry. I feel like I always shed a tear when this story is told.
Yeah, and I'm for sure going to need a few spritzers to get through it. If you're also going to be nervous or scared while listening, make yourself a drink while we make ours. I'm going with a new flavor today. We went with strawberry barefoot fruitscato. So
The expensive stuff.
yeah, super fancy. It's just strawberry moscato. Delicious. Actually didn't even need the San Pellegrino that we added to it, but we're trying to stay true to the spritzer style, so we did add that to it. And I'm kind of feeling a little reminiscent of my Boone's Farms days, not to date myself too much and show exactly how old I am, but it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, before we dive in, we're kind of going to do what we did last time and talk about a frightening event that is currently happening in the world. So, Live Science released an article that said that the nuclear fuel underneath Chernobyl is smoldering again and could explode at any moment. Sorry, the cats. Cats are talking in the background.
Does not like what we're talking about.
But apparently there's tons of nuclear fuel in the plant's basement, in an inaccessible part of the plant's basement, so no one can get to it, that has started to react again, and it's showing no signs of stopping anytime soon.
No, they actually just did an updated story a day ago saying that they're a little nervous that it's probably going to fully melt down. So.
Yeah, apparently, like, the researchers that are in charge of monitoring the plant have detected a steady spike in the number of neutrons in a room called 3052. And it's full of heavy rubble, and there's radioactive mush, which has, like, uranium and stuff that I have no clue, graphite, stuff like that, that's, like, lava, and it might explode, which is the last thing that area needs because, my God.
Why does the fact that the room is a number freak me out more than if it had, like, room B? The 305 whatever room sounds really, really scary, and I would absolutely hate to be living anywhere near that place again because I'm pretty sure that the people that live there are still having issues all these years later from when the reactor melted down the first time. And
oh yeah, like the craziest thing for me that's like unhuman related to Chernobyl is if you look up the catfish ponds that are like in the area, since all of that like radioactive waste went into the water, of course, the local like fish and stuff like catfish are like mutant catfish. They're huge. They're massive catfish because they've been affected by nuclear waste. But yeah, apparently the radioactive waste is currently smoldering like the embers in a barbecue pit, but if it's left undisturbed for too long, it could fully reignite and result in another explosion.
And I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, so I'm going to defer to you. Do you remember, didn't they just recently start letting people, like, back into that area, and they started, like, some weird tours?
Yeah, there are tours. I don't know if it's, like, recent, but I know that you definitely can. You can't go deep in, but you can, like, tour the premises of the plant.
Yeah. All this is reminding me of that terrifying movie, Chernobyl Diaries.
Yeah, Jess McCartney was in that. There was, like, the only scene I remember from that movie is they were, like, in the building, and there was a massive, like, radioactive grizzly bear.
Oh my god.
Like, chasing after them. It was a good movie. It was B-budget and corny and campy, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of, not quite as disgusting, but the friggin' Hills Have Eyes, which still to this day disgusts the hell out of me. It's one of the most repulsive, repugnant movies I've ever seen in my life. So much so that I barely watched the second one because I am a glutton for punishment when it comes to those kinds of things.
I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I love those movies.
Yeah, and Chernobyl Diaries was good, but it was really disturbing. But I don't think it was quite as disturbing as the stories we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. True that.
Okay, so the last few tales that we told are going to sound a little bit tame compared to what we're going to talk about today. And I know we've kind of alluded to our thoughts that the ghost might be a playful spirit. We intentionally waited to give you the most compelling evidence that it is either a child or something that wants us to think it's a child.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can draw that conclusion based on what we're about to disclose.
Yeah, and I wish, it's going to sound really effed up, but I kind of wish you were older at the time because I think it would squash that part of you that started to not believe in the paranormal.
Probably would have also traumatized me, so.
Oh, for sure, yeah. One thing is for certain, that when you were 5, you definitely knew something was here. And there was one day when I was making dinner, and you guys were all in the kitchen with me, and the twins were little enough that they were sitting in their high chairs, kind of doing that baby thing where they were like pounding on the high chair, demanding more food, and you were just sitting in your cute little booster seat coloring and just kind of chilling, waiting for dinner. And right towards the end of cooking the meal, I realized that we were out of butter, and I was making mashed potatoes. You cannot have mashed potatoes without butter. If you do, you're a monster, and it's just wrong. So I asked your dad to run to the store, and at the time we had like a Farm Fresh not too far from our house. And I would finish getting other stuff done, and I'm like, just go, it'll be real fast. And so it was in the fall, and as we talked about before, there's always a paranormal spike in the fall. And just to note that the windows were closed because it was raining outside, and that's important detail for later on in the story. But while your dad was gone, I decided that I had everything done, so I was going to sit down and feed the twins just so I could eat dinner that was hot and be sitting down with the rest of you guys. And as I was sitting at the table, in like the corner of the room is where the trash can is, and I could see something moving. So I turned my head to look, and I saw the trash can lid. It was one of those you could put the trash in from both sides, flipping in full circles around like super duper fast. And you were little and they were little, and I didn't want to freak anybody out, so I tried to like ignore it and not show how freaked out I was.
What did I do?
I guess I was not a very good actress at the time, and so you looked right at it and asked me point blank with your cute little speech impediment you have at the time, Mom, why is the trash can doing that? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what to say.
Was I scared?
You didn't seem to be scared. I think you were more curious than anything because it was such a weird thing to see, and as a little kid, you were just like, oh, that's kind of cool.
How long did it keep spinning? Was it like just like a brief hit, like it spun like 5 times, or did it do it like multiple times?
It went around and around for at least 5 or 6 times, and I mean, when I say it went around, I mean like full circle all the way around, up and down. And
are you sure you didn't hit it or something when you walked past it?
I'm absolutely positive, because once your dad came back and I told him what happened, he said that he thought I was maybe exaggerating, and because I was freaked out, and I perceived it spinning way more than it was. And you looked at him and were like, nuh-uh. It was like whoosh, 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 and we're like mimicking what it did and making a circle with your arm.
He had no choice but to believe you after that.
Yeah,
He
because
doesn't believe a little 5-year-old.
right. And you were very convincing, and you have never been one to make things up or to lie or stretch the truth. So after you told him what you saw, he and I spent a good 5 minutes hitting the trash can from both sides trying to get it to do it, and I don't even know. I mean,
Were you able to?
No, it would only go a quarter of an inch and then it would stop because they're not made to do that.
Right. Unless you put some brunt force behind that.
Right. And there's no way. We tried and tried and tried. There's no way we could do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I remembered that, but
yeah. You don't remember it all?
No, I don't think. I mean, I remember you've told me about it. So, yeah. I mean, at that point, I'm so little that
false memories. She's remembered.
I don't remember.
Yeah. It was also around that same time that we started to notice a lot of things missing.
I do remember this. Well, also probably just being told this, but pacifiers and
yes,
binkies and stuff would just be gone without a trace.
Yeah, and that's what we call. Just so you guys know, that's what we call pacifiers. I'm not sure why, but we've always referred to them as binkies. I don't know where it came from, but it's always been a thing.
I don't think that's just us, is it?
Is Binky a brand, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe they just did it because it sounds cuter than pacifier. Pacifier is
maybe.
literally shut up.
Yeah. But so at this time, the binkies started going missing. I initially just thought it was Hannah and Caleb throwing stuff away or misplacing things and putting me in strange spots. But after a while, we realized that absolutely was not the case.
Yeah. What made you realize that?
I think primarily it was when I would put them to bed at night. They would both have a pacifier. They were in their cribs on, different sides of the room. I would go back in literally a couple hours later, and one or both of them would be gone. And I would search the bed, search the floor around the bed, search everywhere, and there was no way that they couldn't have gotten out of bed. Mm-hmm. There was no logical explanation for why it was gone, and they would not go to sleep without them. So it's not like they just didn't have a pacifier or have a binky. They had it, and they were just
Did they
gone.
Cry? Because a lot of times babies, especially if you disturb them in their sleep and the disturbance is taking away the pacifier, which is the safety, did it disturb them? Did they ever notice or react to it?
No, because I think what would probably happen was once they fell asleep, they would sleep with their mouth open and the bink would fall out. And so I think whatever was taking the pacifier was waiting until they were asleep. Mm-hmm. One thing I do know for sure is that this happened almost 3 times a week, and we spent a fortune on freaking pacifiers.
Mm-hmm. They're not cheap either, especially when you're buying for 2 babies.
Yeah, multiple times a week. I mean, normal people can get a pacifier and it can last for a month until it starts getting some kind of wear. So
yeah, that's so weird.
It is weird. And we really thought, I mean, I never even really connected that I thought it was something paranormal until it was a few years later. And we always joked about something stole the binkies. But when we went to put the flooring that we have now, we have laminate in the house, we pulled the carpet up from every single room in this house, closets, everything. And your dad and I joked that, we're going to find the binky stash wherever it is. Really, truly thought that there was going to be some little corner somewhere that we would find this big old thing of pacifiers.
Which would be weird anyways, because it's what do you have, a ferret stashing your binkies in one spot?
I mean, I guess we were kind of holding on to the idea that the twins were just maybe sticking it somewhere.
Right, like babies do. Did you find any of them?
Not a single solitary one of the missing 30 to 40 to 50 pacifiers were ever recovered. We literally never saw them again. I'm not sure what black hole, what void in this house is. I don't know. I mean, I just went through the garbage looking for them. I looked everywhere, and those things were gone forever.
Yeah, that is crazy. Things just disappearing is kind of akin to paranormal,
mm-hmm.
Just hiding things. But it just poofing into thin air is weird, because where are they even gonna take it?
Right. Is there some alternate universe with a bunch of little ghost babies?
Maybe they threw them in the trash and
you
just didn't realize it.
No, I looked in the trash, I swear.
Yeah.
I looked everywhere. And they weren't even, I mean, when they first started missing, they weren't even big enough really to walk to the trash. They were babies.
Yeah, that's crazy, but still not the scariest thing that has ever been told about this house.
Nope. Do you want to tell them the story of Sammy, or at least start us off?
Sure. And I do think I was I do remember this. Like, I remember, like, experiencing these. But when my siblings and I were growing up, we used to play together all the time. Like, we had a separate room that was called, like, our playroom. We had all of our toys in there. It was just, like, where we played Barbies and, like, made my brother do girly stuff.
Yeah, a little kitchen. It was really cute.
It was cute. And, usually in one of our bedrooms with the baby gate up to keep them wandering was where we played to, like, prevent them from falling downstairs. We weren't in the playroom.
Yeah. And you guys would play for hours and hours and hours, and it was super sweet. And part of me kind of, as much as I love how things are now, I do get kind of reminiscent and sad for those days.
Yeah, it was fun.
I tried to make sure I gave you guys enough space to be independent and develop independence, but I was always super close by. Wanted to make sure that I kept an eye on you.
Yeah. So, like I said, we would always play together, but my brother, who he didn't want us to mention his name here, but if anyone knows us, you know who my brother is.
She only has one.
I do only have one. He doesn't want us to mention his name, but figure it out. He started, like, playing all by himself. So the way that I remember this is we would be, like, playing, and then there'd be, like, a lull in playing where we'd just be, like, sitting there, and then he'd go to, like, a completely different part of the room, usually, like, a corner, and just, like, sit there and, like, play by himself, which isn't weird on its own. He's the only boy, so, like, he wants his race cars and stuff.
But you guys played cars with him, too.
Yeah. They were about 3 or 4, and
yeah, that sounds
we'll
about
go
right.
with 4. But like I said, one day he started going off on his own, and he would go to him and my sister's room when they shared a room because they were little, and he would play by himself for hours. And not only that, but, like, he would sit in the middle of the floor with his toys and would have full-on conversations.
Yeah.
Like, not even, like, baby, like, you know how kids just, like, talk to themselves. They're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm gonna do this. But it was like he was talking to something, and something was keeping up the conversation on the other end. And
there's a definite back and forth.
He coined this person or thing that he was talking to as his quote-unquote imaginary friend, Sammy.
Yeah. I don't even know if he ever used the word imaginary friend.
No,
I think he just called him Sammy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were always like, oh, okay, I think it's his imaginary friend.
But I will say, it is important to note, like, I think at that time, most of his things were called Sammy, because he had that baby blanket that he also called Sammy. I think that was, like, his default, maybe because we have a cousin around his age named Sammy, but he called multiple things Sammy, if I remember correctly.
Was Sammy born then? I'm trying to think the age difference between them.
Yeah. Well, maybe not.
No, I don't think Samuel was born yet.
So maybe not, but it was very weird. He would refer to multiple things as Sammy.
Yeah.
That was probably because it's an easy word for him to say.
Maybe. Did he ever describe Sammy to you?
Yes. He said he was little like him, and he had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Important to note, he who shall not be named is not blonde hair and blue-eyed.
No, he is not. Never was.
No, there's one.
He does have blue eyes.
There's one blonde in the family, and that's me, and that's by choice, not by birth. So it wasn't like he was, describing
himself in the mirror or anything like that. And when he was little, he had, like, pretty red hair, too.
Yeah, it was like brownish red.
But, yeah. And he used to tell all of us that. Like, you would ask him, and he'd be like, yeah, he has blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. He used to tell me things about Sammy and why you guys couldn't play with Sammy, and it literally is some of the scariest things ever, and still to this day makes my skin crawl to think about.
Yeah, so when asked, like, oh, why can't we come upstairs and play with you while you're playing with Sammy, he would say, Sammy doesn't want to play with you. He only likes me. Now leave before he gets mad. And he wasn't, like, joking. That his face was fully serious. He was repeating what was told to him, was what it looked like. And he was not a serious child by any means.
Mean or malicious.
It was, like, mean. Like,
yeah.
And he would never... Of course, when he gets older, brothers are going to be like brothers do. But at that age, he was still in his sweet phase.
He was one of the sweetest
where he wants to
ever
play with us.
Yeah.
So it was very out of character.
It was. And I'm not kidding. One of the scariest things that I think a kid at his age could ever say. And after that, I did not like when I had to hear about Sammy at all.
No, I didn't either. And there's a memory that I have where I was at my grandma's house. And the way that my grandma's house is set up is like, when we were little, when you walk in the front door, there's like 2 stairs, and there's like a little tiny, just, I don't know what you call it, like a foyer.
A little entryway.
Yeah, just like a little entryway. And that's where we would play, because we could be away from everyone and we could just, like, play on the stairs and do what we wanted. But he would do it there, too. Like, he would go sit in the other room, completely away from everyone else, in that little cove when no one was there, and just talk to himself.
Yeah.
Like, full conversations to himself, playing his Lincoln Logs. It was weird.
Yeah, you had an imaginary friend, too. Do you remember her?
I do. Her name was Dee Dee. And I think I named her Dee Dee because I loved Dexter's Laboratory at the time. And it was an easy name for me to say.
Yeah, and your imaginary friend wasn't quite as scary to me. I think because it made more sense for you to have one at the time. You were the oldest, and you had Dee Dee come into your life when I was pregnant, and I think you were just bored. And
I was an only child.
Yeah, most people who have imaginary friends, most kids, it's because they don't have somebody else to play with. So it made sense when you had her. But Sammy never really made sense because Caleb had plenty of people to play with and keep him entertained. So something about that always didn't sit right with me.
Right, like he's a twin, so he had always had a sibling that was exactly his age, and then I'm only 4 years older, so
yeah,
it was never that big of a difference. But
and,
I agree.
Yeah, and I was willing to look the other way and pretend that Sammy was an imaginary friend until the one night that literally changed everything.
Yeah. Before we go into that, I want to tell you about Dee Dee's demise.
Oh, no.
Because, like my mom said, she came along when, like, probably right before you got pregnant with Hannah and Caleb. Oh, name drop. Sorry, guys. With my siblings. Sorry.
You've been outed.
So one day, it was probably, like, really close to them being born. I don't remember this, but as I'm told, apparently at our old house, I, like, came running full speed out of, like, the back bedroom, just sobbing.
Hysterical.
Like, hysterical tears.
The twins were born, so it makes sense.
Yes, and my mom and dad were like, what is wrong with you? Like, what's wrong? Are you okay? Like, probably thinking I hurt myself or something. And I'm like, I killed Dee Dee!
Dee Dee's dead!
Dee Dee's dead! I killed her! And they were like, what?
You literally murdered your imaginary
I killed
friend.
her off because I don't need you anymore. I got real friends.
She couldn't just move away. No, she got straight murked.
I mean,
it does not make.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the big story now.
We are, but we're gonna take a teeny little break because I seriously need a refill on my drink before we start. So we'll be back in like 30 seconds. All right, we're back. Got a refill. This is seriously some delicious stuff, just so you know. I highly recommend it. My favorite drink so far.
And Barefoot's only like $5, if that, a bottle.
Yeah, the whole thing with the sparkling wine was, or sparkling water was $7 and some change.
Yeah, we went to Schnuck, so we were balling.
Yeah, not a bad day.
All right, let's get into the juicy stuff.
All right, here goes. Okay, so I had just gotten home from work and had taken a shower. And I know there seems to be a lot of me showering in this long story, but at least you know I'm clean. Anyway, I had taken my glasses off and climbed into bed next to your dad. And I faced the wall like I always do. I have forever done that. I'm a big chicken. I don't see very well, and so sometimes when I look out into the room at night, I see things that aren't there. Everything just kind of looks scary when it's like a big, shapeless blob.
Yeah, like we all have poor eyesight, except for my dad, whose eyesight is getting worse, but we got the poor eyesight genes. But if you have, like, bad eyes, you know, like a jacket on the door looks like a massive human being, right, if your eyes are blurry.
Yeah. I'm sorry about the bad eyesight. I wish I could change that. But it had been a few minutes since I got into bed. I was trying to fall asleep, but I wasn't really having much luck because I was usually pretty amped up when I got home from work. I was still waiting tables and bartending at this time, so I spent hours and hours on my feet, so it took a while for my adrenaline to go down. And, excuse me, I've got some Spritzer burps. I apologize. When I was lying there, I felt someone crawl into bed. They felt him crawl up the bottom of the bed, and I wasn't sure who was at first, but it wasn't unusual for any of you guys to come in and sleep with us in the middle of the night. And so I didn't really think too much of it. And as a mom or a dad, you guys that are parents will know that you really quickly begin to realize, like, you know, differences between, like, you can tell which kid's getting into bed. So I realized that it felt pretty close to, like, Caleb. It felt like him. He always kind of got in a little slower than the girls. They were usually scared in the middle of the night and kind of ran and jumped into bed, and it was way more abrupt. So I could feel him crawling into bed, and I was super tired, didn't really want to roll over, so I just put my arm behind me and patted the bed in between us, like, you know, come on, come squeeze in between us, and he did. And do you remember when you were little and you guys would always, like, play with my hair?
Yeah, I still do that with myself, too. When I'm, like, super tired, I'll, like, twirl my hair around my finger and help me go to sleep. Yeah. That's what we did.
So they would always take their fingers
Lucky
and...
you get free.
I know, right?
Free head rubs.
They would always take their fingers and, like, twirl them around in the back of my hair, and it was like just an involuntary, like, reflex that they had that would help them fall asleep. So I'm lying there, and your brother started twirling my hair, and I was trying to figure out why he came in and ask him if he was okay, if he, you know, had a stomach ache, did he have to go to the bathroom, did he have a bad dream, and he was not responding, which wasn't really like him. He would usually tell me what was going on. And so I kept asking him questions, and I guess just him playing with my hair was making me kind of tired then, and I was trying not to doze off. And after a minute, I got worried because he wasn't answering me. And so I decided to roll over and make sure he was okay. And so I slowly rolled over so he didn't pull my hair with his finger that was still entwined in my hair, and got ready to ask him some more questions and see if he was okay. And it was not him. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I can still remember how bad my throat hurt. It was this small, tiny, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid, and it was terrifying. He wasn't terrifying, except for he wasn't supposed to be there.
Right, yeah. What did he do?
He kind of got terrifying after a sec. He just smiled this kind of like little half-crooked smile, like not a good smile like you do in response to someone, but more like I have a secret, or
gotcha.
Yeah, or yeah, I can tell you're really worried and scared kind of thing. And that face just scared the living shit out of me, and then it got really super creepy, and the child started slowly backing off the bed, like crawling backwards off the bed. And I wish to God this were a nightmare. I swear to you it was not. I am screaming still, like I don't even know how I had enough breath to continuously scream as long as I did. And your poor dad, I know I scared the shit out of him. I'm like, got one hand on him. I'm like mimicking my hand right now. I had one hand on him, shaking him to wake him up, and he was already awake anyway, but I couldn't stop. I just needed to be touching somebody, and he was scared to death. And being startled awake like that, he, you know, took him a minute to gather his thoughts where he could ask me what was going on. And I'm like staring at the bottom of the bed, watching this kid crawl off. And by the time he is fully awake enough to ask me what's going on, it was right as that kid's head like disappeared off the end of the bed. And it was such a slow, deliberate crawl, like knowing, I swear that it was, that kid was toying with me. I swear to God, there's no other explanation for the slowness and the methodical way that it exited off that bed.
I think the scariest part of that to me is that, like you said, our like comfort thing was to get in bed with you and play with your hair.
Yeah.
So if whatever that was,
it
knew to do that, that means that whatever it was observing.
I'm pretty sure it was the binky stealing.
Which is absolutely horrifying. I don't like
the binky
to even talk about it because I don't like to imagine.
Oh, it was so scary.
Ghost child, like in my head, the way that it crawled off is probably way scarier than it actually happened. But
no, it's exactly as scary as it was.
I'm like just picturing.
It was so.
Yeah.
It was like scary. It was scary movie worthy. It was crazy, and I know for a fact that I was not dreaming. I know that it sounds like a bad dream, but you know how things are when you dream. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how like
eyes.
Yeah.
If you have like bad eyesight, you don't dream in bad eyesight.
No.
Like you can see.
Yeah.
Like your dreams aren't blurry. So if what you saw was like a blurry little face, then you weren't imagining it.
No.
That was what you were seeing.
And it was it was blurry. I mean, not blurry to the point where I couldn't make out like features, but I was seeing with my real eyes. I was not seeing in like a dream, like clarity. And I've never dreamt in blurry before that I can recall.
Did you ever see him again?
No, I never saw him again, and I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe I scared him as much as he scared me, but I doubt that. I will never, ever forget that night because it was and still is the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my whole entire life.
But he was only a little kid ghost. Like, how scary can that be? Which is a stupid question of me to ask because those are quite literally the scariest. Because most of the time they're not actually little kids.
Right? Yeah. And
I've seen The Shining.
Mm-mm.
Those weren't real little kids.
None of them. You should ask your brother if he'll talk about it now that you've outed him. Because I remember the day he stopped being friends with Sammy. I'm not sure if you remember that day or not.
Once again, I remember the story. I don't remember it happening, but I do know how it went.
Yeah. This is still something that I think Caleb says. I know we've already said his name, so I'm going to do it. And he says he doesn't quite remember it, but I think part of him does. We were downstairs. Everybody was downstairs. You guys were playing in your playroom, and your dad and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. And Caleb was like, I'm going to go upstairs and play in my bedroom, which is not, like we said, it wasn't abnormal at that time because he always went up and played with Sammy.
Yeah, that's probably what he was doing too. Play with Sammy instead of the rest of us.
Yeah, so he came into the living room and he was like, I'm going to go upstairs and play in my room. And your dad and I were like, fine. And so I sat and I listened for him to go up the stairs. I don't know what I thought listening for, tiny toddlers going up and down the stairs was going to do. But if somebody fell and got hurt or something, I wanted to be able to pay attention. And it's always been a paranoia of mine that somebody's going to fall down the stairs and get hurt really bad. Knock on wood.
I've fallen down the stairs many times here, so.
But that's when you were older.
Right.
It's not when you were younger. So anyway, I heard him get to the top of the stairs. Like we talked before, we have a split. So I could hear him go up the first flight of stairs and heard his couple of little steps on the landing. And then I heard him go up the second flight. And I could hear him start walking down the hallway towards the bedroom. And he got halfway down the hallway to the bathroom and just let out this blood-curdling, horrible scream that scared everybody. And I jumped up, your dad jumped up, and I ran as fast as I could to get to the stairs. And I got there at the exact moment that he made it to the top of the first flight of stairs. And he just launched himself off, and thankfully I caught him because he was, I think, probably 5 or 6 around this time, and he was I remember he was heavy enough where I had trouble carrying him. Mm-hmm. So he very easily could have fallen and gotten hurt. But
what did he say when you caught him?
At first he didn't say anything. He was trembling, shaking really bad, but he was able to say that he didn't like Sammy anymore. He just kept saying, I don't like Sammy anymore. I don't like Sammy anymore. And I was like, oh, I don't understand what's going on. And it took a while after we got him calmed down. I mean, he was like snot sobbing, like so scared and sad. And I was finally able to get him to tell me what happened. And he said he was walking down the hall to his room, and when he passed by the bathroom, I was talking with my hands. He looked in to the bathroom because he saw Sammy standing in there. And I guess Sammy just, was able to walk freely around the house. And when he looked in at Sammy's face changed, and he smiled at him, and I know this smile because he did it to me, and he smiled meanly at him, and then he started walking towards him really fast, and
yeah, that's so scary.
It is so scary,
especially for a poor little 5-year-old who's like, this is my friend,
right, this is my BFF that I play with all the time. And I've never seen it to this day. I've never seen your brother look that scared. And I mean, it was obvious he was not making up what he was doing. It wouldn't have made any sense anyway for him to be like, he wasn't. It was crazy. And it took a few weeks before he stopped sleeping in bed with us because he was so scared. And I honestly kind of felt better with him sleeping in our bed because I was still scared, because that was a super awful, scary thing to have happen. And I think it was probably the last big, scary thing to have happen in the house.
Yeah, I mean, definitely of that stature.
Yeah, I mean, we still have things happen. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying our house is not still haunted, because we do have the shadow people that you don't want to talk about.
Yeah, we have like strange noises and stuff, but it's not anything where it's like physical manifestations of things that multiple people are experiencing.
No, and I don't think there's ever from that time been anything quite as concrete as the Sammy sightings.
Yeah. Was that the last time you ever spoke of him?
Pretty much. I tried to ask him a few questions after that, but he didn't ever want to talk about it, and he still doesn't want to talk about it, even though he says he doesn't remember. It's, it's a point of conversation that he does not choose to go into.
Right. Yeah, I don't blame him.
No, he's not a welcome topic in the house.
I will say, though, don't know if this story is meant to be shared, but my brother does think that there was a point in which he was, like, possessed or, like, at least
getting there,
coerced into doing something, because he remembers when he was younger, like, feeling like something really heavy on his chest. And if any of you have ever experienced sleep paralysis, that's the first sign, is like you feel like something's like stepping on you, like a weight on your chest. But he felt like a weight on his chest, and then the next thing he knew, he was standing in front of your bed.
My bed, yeah. It was super paranormal activity.
It was definitely like, when Katie in Paranormal Activity is like on the video, like watching Micah sleep, like that's like what it was. And he didn't remember getting there.
No, it was one of those things where I could feel him standing there, and I was like, what are you doing? And it took a minute for him to snap out of it and be able to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know why I'm here or how I got here.
Yeah, it's, wine spillage.
It's okay.
It's all right. So, yeah,
that's our episode for today. We've gone pretty long for our short episode, but there's a lot to talk about.
It is. Definitely, I'm sorry, our spritzers are supposed to be short, but it just has not been quite. I mean, they're shorter still, but I feel like in order to do the stories justice, they've needed the time. We have listed this as part 3 of 3, but there are some other things that we can still talk about that are haunted house related that I feel like I would like to.
They're like fairly recent too. We have a Ouija session that we would like to talk about, because it's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life.
Yeah.
But while you wait to hear about that, we are going to have our next full-length episode later this week on the famous Demon House. And the extended cut, or whatever he wanted to call it, the uncut version of Zach Bagans' Demon House movie was just put on Discovery Plus, if any of you are interested in doing some light homework before we talk about it, because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, or you could wait and just hear what we have to say and then watch it afterwards.
Yeah, but we're not as cute as him, so.
I don't know about that, but yeah. So if you haven't listened to our other episodes, we would appreciate you giving them a try as well.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the Monsters and Mixers podcast. Don't forget to like and follow us, leave a 5-star rating, and please share your stories with us if you have any via email at monstersandmixers2@gmail.com, or you can get to us on Messenger through our Monsters and Mixers podcast page on Facebook.
So see you next time when we dive into another terrifying tale and concoct a new delicious drink to wash down the horror. Now get out there and meet some ghosts.
And make some toasts.